Hi, welcome to our podcast channel, Agile Habits. I'm Hugo Messer. I'll be the host for this podcast for some of the podcasts, along with some of my colleagues and great people from the field that will be the guests in our podcast. So the Agile Habits podcast is here because I believe in the last year, for most of us, it's been very hard to have a human contact, to smell and feel people, because we're all sitting behind our screens. And one of the reasons I started Ekipa is to bring an Agile spark. So with this Agile spark, I want to trigger people to go differently about the way they do work, the way they organize, the way they think about work. I want to bring entrepreneurship. I want to bring innovation, mostly to the Indonesian audience, because that's where most of our clients at this stage are. We also have offices in Singapore and Malaysia, but I think the Agile spark has to spread everywhere across Asia. Now, because it's so challenging to bring people into a room, which we used to do before, so we could bring the Agile spark by doing meetups physically, by having conferences, etc., and this brings a lot of energy. So our podcast is trying to fill that gap right now. And with this podcast, I want to bring three things to you. First of all, I want to bring inspiration, because I think it's important to learn from other people what have they done on the road to agility, or on their personal transformation, or on launching digital products. I want to inspire you with stories from the field that you can learn from and take to your own environment, to your own life. Second of all, it's about perspiration. So it's about doing things. There's a lot of practitioners that are implementing, for example, the Scrum framework, that are working as a Scrum Master and as an Agile coach or as an innovator somewhere. So I want to get people on the podcast that can share the practices with you, or the experiences they have with those practices. Yeah? It's about dancing, about running, about getting stuff done. And that brings me to the third point that I want to bring in this podcast, is reflection. As we all know, reflection is important. We have this concept of retrospective in Agile or in Scrum, which makes a team look back at what they are doing. But we sometimes forget that it is also important for ourselves. And what I usually use as a symbol is, I learned this from another trainer a few years ago. She has this concept of dancing or being on the balcony. So for me, reflection is being on the balcony. When we're dancing, we're getting stuff done. We're sweating, we're running, we're creating outcomes, we're getting stuff out the door. When we're in the balcony, we can reflect. So we can take it easy, we can see what's going on, we can look farther, so we can think about strategy, we can think about how to get better people onto the dance floor, all those things that we forget when we're in the dance. So those three things are what I want to bring to you with these podcasts. I also believe that there's three stages in Agile, and I'm going to get people into the podcast from those three stages. First is Start Agile. So if you start Agile, you need to look into the practices like Scrum, like Kanban, or the Agile Manifesto. That's where most people start Agile. And once you get into that, and once you get started with Agile, you start realizing that an important thing to do is to develop Agile habits, to change your behavior as a leader, and also change the behavior in your team, and to be very clear about what kind of behavior change you expect from people and from yourself. Once you get those two things in place, so you started Agile, you started realizing and changing behaviors, you are on the road to an Agile organization. Because if you want to have a larger group of people in an enterprise or in an NGO, whatever it is that you're doing, to become Agile, to create an Agile organization, you need to do it one person at a time. So I think it's important to start with yourself and to learn about the Agile habits needed on a bigger scale in order to create this Agile organization. So stay tuned for all the podcasts, and I hope you're going to be a fervent listener. And if you have any feedbacks or comments or maybe suggestions for people that want to be on the podcast, maybe you want to be in the podcast yourself, please reach out to me or to one of my colleagues, and we'd be happy to have a conversation with you. So stay tuned.